Hi class, today we're going to be talking about how to rosin your bow and when it is that you need rosin on your bow. So a lot of you out there think that whenever you sound bad, and this happens in my class all the time, you're playing something and you sound bad, you don't sound the way you're supposed to, and you think that, oh, it's because you need rosin. And no, most of the time it's not because you need rosin. So I'm going to explain to you how to know when you need rosin, and we can go from there. So you don't need to rosin your bow every single time you play the violin, and a lot of parents out there think that you do, and you'll rosin the bow for the student. You don't need to do it every day. You don't need to rosin your bow every day unless you're practicing for 4 hours every day. So it really depends on how much you're practicing. If you're practicing an hour every day, you might need to rosin your bow every other day. So a bow that needs rosin will not have a good sound. So the best way to know if you need rosin is the sound and the feeling too. So if your bow is slipping, like if it's sliding on the string, you'll need rosin. So I have here a bow that needs rosin. And so listen to the sound that it makes. I have good rosin here, so you'll hear the sound here is really good, and I have some rosin here, and you'll hear that it sounds different than it does when I'm playing here in the middle. So you see here? Sounds good. Here I don't have any sound. Now you gotta check, obviously, if you're playing with not a straight bow, that's gonna give you funny sounds. If your bow is too close to the bridge, that's going to give you a funny sound. But obviously, if you're following those 5 reasons not to sound funny, and your bow still sounds funny, then it's because you need rosin. And I can also feel when I'm playing on the E string, and I get to those parts, my bow moves faster. It's like being on ice. If you can imagine yourself being on ice with shoes, that's the same thing as not having rosin. It's slippery. The bow is slippery, and the bow's not pulling on the string like it should with the rosin. So right there, I need rosin, and that's how it'll happen with your bow. You'll need rosin in some spots. It's not like one day you wake up and the whole bow needs rosin. No, what'll happen is you'll feel that some spots need more rosin. It's just, it sounds weird. And your bow will be slippery. It'll just slide on the string like this. It'll slide down. So how to rosin a bow. So let me go ahead and start off by rosining my bow. So the way that you do this, rosin can come in many shapes and sizes. So this is the rosin I use. Let's see if we can get... Some of you have rosin that comes in a little box. Really, there's any rosin will work for a beginner student. All you have to do though is be careful that it won't break, because it doesn't break, because rosin will break. Rosin, like a hard candy, if you drop it on the floor, it'll shatter into a million pieces. So what I like to do to help me avoid that is with my right hand. So go ahead and put your violin down. You don't need your violin for this. You just need the right hand holding the bow and the left hand holding the rosin. And so what I like to do is I like to make little bumpers. You see right here at the frog, this right here, this metal part, that metal part right where the horsehair starts, that metal part is hard, obviously, because it's metal. And when you're rosining, if it hits hard on the rosin, it'll chip it. You can see my rosin is a little chipped right there, and if you hit it hard enough, it'll chip it really bad, and maybe it'll crack it. So what I like to do is I like to create little bumpers with my thumb. So I put my thumb right there on that corner, and I put my pointing finger right there in the other corner. So I like to call these bumpers. They're little bumpers, so that when you're rosining and the rosin is right there close to the frog, it doesn't hit the metal part, it hits my fingers. And yeah, there will be a little part right there because of that does not get rosin, but That's okay. You don't end up playing there anyways. So go ahead and create that little bumper. And what you want to do is, like if you were playing the violin, press down on it. You need the way that the rosin comes off of the rosin and onto the bow is friction. So you need to create a little bit of heat. Pretend like you're starting a fire. So very pressing down hard enough, move it back and forth and create that friction. Friction, class, is the same thing when you get your two hands and you rub them together. You're going to start feeling a little heat. And that is the friction creating heat. And that's what you need, is to create that heat so that the rosin comes off the rosin and onto your bow. And you want to go back and forth. And at the same time that you're going back and forth, you want to move the bow down. So see, I'm still going back and forth. But now my rosin is somewhere close to the middle. See, now it's in the middle. And I'm still pressing down on the bow to create that heat. I'm not just going there like this lightly. No, you have to physically press down on the bow. And it's okay. You don't have to use the correct... You don't have to hold the bow correctly right now. You can hold it like this, but press down hard. And at the same time, go back and forth, up and down, all the way until you get to the very tip. And my hand hurts a little bit, just a little bit. It's not pain, it just hurts because I'm pressing down. Pressing down here feels different than pressing down here. So right here, I'm still pressing down to create that heat. Then I go all the way up, and I go all the way down, and maybe do that 2 more, total of 4 times up and then down, up and then down, and then that's it. My bow is fully rosined. And so when you play, that looks like it has good rosin. I can see there's a little white part on the string. How do you know if you have too much rosin? Every time after I rosin, I like to do this. So this is not recommended to always do this because you're not supposed to touch the horsehair. But if you do, just do that. You'll see some rosin coming out of it, and maybe do another one right here, and that's it. The excess rosin has left the horsehair, and you're good to go. You don't want to put too much rosin because it'll get it'll get sticky. It'll get gross. Your violin will, all that extra rosin will just go on your violin and create a big mess, especially if you're not wiping down your violin after every time you play. It'll just create a big mess, and chances are you're not doing that to begin with. So you don't want to put too much rosin on your bow. If you need more rosin, you can always re-rosin your bow. But if you have too much rosin, you're kind of just stuck there with all that extra rosin, and you just wasted, not to mention you've wasted some rosin that you could have used later on. So don't put too much rosin on the bow. And again, try to not always be doing that with your bow, because you know that the oils of your fingers, they don't mix with the rosin. All right, so now let me go ahead and put some rosin on this bow that needed rosin now. I'm gonna put some bow again. You put your bumpers, and make sure again you go back and forth, and you're pressing hard. You're pressing down on it. I've seen some students rosining your bow like this. I've seen this once. This is the plastic part. That is not the rosin part. The rosin part is this gold part here, or the really dark part right here. That is the rosin. Okay, if your rosin has like a little cloth, some rosins have like a little cloth that cover it up. Make sure the cloth part is not rubbing up against the horsehair. Make sure you remove that cloth so that when you do rosin your bow, none of that cloth is rubbing on the horsehair, because all you're doing is just taking the rosin off and putting it onto the cloth. Now, a brand new bow, if you just bought a violin bow, you're going to need a lot of rosin, because your bow has 0 rosin and your rosin is brand new. So sometimes they'll recommend that you scratch your rosin. That really is, you only need to really do that in the situation that you have a brand new bow and a brand new rosin. And now you don't have to do that, but it is easier if it's scratched to kind of start getting the rosin out and onto the horsehair. So keep in mind that I'm pressing down every single stroke that I'm moving up and down. I'm pressing down on the bow, and you can hear it now. It's going. I can hear that there is something going on every time I move it. And when I started that, the parts that didn't have rosin, you didn't hear the sound. So now my bow should have rosin. I can do that. And there you go. So maybe you're playing, good sound. Ooh, maybe you missed the spot right here. You can go back and re-rosin, but just re-rosin that part that needs the rosin. You don't have to re-rosin the whole bow. Just this part sounds, it sounds muted, and there, until you get a nice clear sound. So another way, if you don't want to touch the rosin and do that, you can just kind of really fast and very careful not to hit anything with your bow. Just kind of do that, and the rosin will fly out of the bow. Because again, you don't want it to be very dirty. You don't want it to get very sticky. That's how you rosin your bow. Now rosin, fun fact, comes from trees. It comes from tree sap. So sometimes you'll see me blowing on stuff. That's me trying to get away, remove the rosin. I highly recommend that you have good hygiene, and after you practice every day, with your cloth, you make sure you get all the rosin out. That rosin is fresh. Wiping it down right away will remove it. And you can get under the strings like that, and you can bring your cloth up on the fingerboard under the strings like that, and you can remove it. And if you do that every single time, you're gonna have a clean violin, especially if your violin is brand new. You can do that under the fingerboard too, generally like that, and that's good enough. Now if you don't do that every single day, what will happen is the rosin will stick, and you're going to put more rosin on top of that, and every time you play, you're adding more rosin on top of that, and pretty soon you're going to have a big mess that you're going to need some chemicals to clean your violin. And I'm going to make a video on how to clean the violin later, but you don't want to be cleaning your violin with chemicals all the time, especially if you're 7, 8 years old. The easiest way is just to wipe it off while it's still fresh. That's what I always recommend. That's the easiest way to do. You just have to remember to do it.